Good evening, friends. The subject of my talk this evening is facing death with dignity. Well, in our scriptures in Hinduism, this advice has been given. Always think of the inevitability of death. So in other countries of Asia also, there are stories about death. Let me tell you a story this evening. This is a story in which the Sultan of Damascus, in case you don't know what the word Sultan means king. King of Damascus was in his palace. His palace was surrounded by beautiful gardens and all. And when he was on the front porch of his palace, then he suddenly, a young man whom he knew, handsome young man, came to him and said, "O Sultan, please give me the fastest horse that you have in your stable." Sultan asked, "Why?" He said, "I have to go to Baghdad right now." And the Sultan asked, "Why are you going to Baghdad?" And he said, "When I entered your garden, I saw death sitting there, and death waved at me. So that's why I want to run away from death. That's why I will use the fastest horse that you have, and I will go to the city of Baghdad." From Damascus, he wanted to go to Baghdad. And the horse was given and the young man went away. And then the Sultan went for a walk in his garden, and there he saw death sitting there. And then the Sultan asked death, "Why did you scare that young man?" Then death said, "No, I will not scare him. I was surprised to see him here, because I was supposed to meet him in Baghdad, and then I would take him to my abode. That's why I was surprised." So the young man, to avoid death, escaped to Baghdad from Damascus, using the fastest horse that the Sultan had. But death would be there. This story gives the idea of the inevitability of death. You can't escape from death. That is the idea. Everybody, those who are young, they want to avoid death. Even in the Mahabharata, there is a statement made by Yudhishthira, who is supposed to be very wise, a prince. "Ahani ahani bhutani gachanti yama mandiram shesha amritatvam icchanti kimaschariyam ataparam." That means every day living beings are going to the abode of death. But those who remain, they want to make their bodies immortal. That is, they don't want to die. So the young man was like that. To escape death, he went from Damascus to Baghdad. But death would get him there. That's why he could not escape death. So death is inevitable. But we have to learn to face death with courage and dignity. Yes, there are some people who can do that. I remember my boyhood. I was born a precocious child, it looks like. Even when I was a little boy, I would ask questions like, why am I here? Why am I born? And so many questions I would ask my mother. So, so those who knew me, they gave me a name which, if translated, will be Mr. Why. So, and I was admitted to the high school when I was only 7. And I finished my education, that means got my degree in science when I was just 14 years old. Most other boys at that time would not be able to do that. At least 18 or 19 years old they should be to get the degree. But for some reason I could do that because I was obedient. Obedient to my parents, obedient to my teachers. I am obedient to my spiritual teacher. I am even obedient to the well-wishers and doctors. Because Sri Ramakrishna, who was a divine incarnation, he would see doctors. He is my role model. He came to teach us how we should behave. Yes, divinity who took a human form to teach us how we should live in this world and how we should die and how we shall become spiritually illumined. Spiritual illumination means knowing that we are divinity. So I was talking about my boyhood. Then I was about 10 years old. That boy Noni, I considered him to be a great friend of mine. But I didn't know that he had become jealous of me. Even when I was 10 years old, I could write very good poems in my mother tongue, which is Bengali. And my results in school were very good. I used to stand first in the class in the final examination, annual examination. So that might have made him jealous of me, but I was not aware of that. One day I got a letter addressed to me, and there the names of all the boys of the neighborhood were put. And among them, Noni's name was also hiding. Then they said, we won't talk to you anymore. And they stopped talking actually for a day or two. Then I started talking to them. Then they said that it was Noni who was the ringleader, and he had asked them not to talk to me. They started talking. But it was a great shock to me at that age. That is, someone doesn't talk to me and I would not talk to him. That thought perturbed me. And a thought came at that age. If I die now, will I die with the thought that I don't talk to someone? That made me upset. And he said, no, that cannot happen. Luckily, a worship celebration was taking place in our neighborhood in a temple. And Noni and his family went there. And that temple was very close to our house, so I could see them. So I went there and talked to Noni. He was surprised, but I talked to him nevertheless. So I didn't know why that thought came to my mind. I was very young. I didn't want to die with the thought that I was not talking to someone. Yes. Most probably in my previous incarnation I had done many things to develop that kind of mind. Anyway, that's a different matter. I am not giving an autobiographical description of what I was and what I am. But I thought I would tell you because I didn't want to die with the thought that I don't talk to someone. That means I wanted to face death with dignity. Later I read someone was saying that a person should learn to die with dignity, with goodwill toward all and malice toward none. Yes, I understand that very well now. It is very true. And there are so many others that faced death with dignity. Let me take, for example, Jesus Christ. He was a divine incarnation. But the people around him did not recognize him to be one. And there was decline in spirituality in that area. Because in the Mahabharata, that great epic of Hinduism, which is an ancient one, there it is mentioned that God in the form of Krishna was saying, Yada yada ye dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tatatmanam srijamyam. That is, when there is decline of spirituality in the world, then to revive spirituality, I am born as a human being. As God is saying through Sri Krishna. So, Jesus was one such divine incarnation. But the people around him did not recognize him to be a great soul. Very few people can recognize a divine incarnation. And then he was crucified. That was those who would be given death sentence, they would be nailed to a cross, their hands and feet and their stomach, terrible way. That's how they would kill people in those days. Cross. Jesus was on the cross and then suffering apparently intense physical pain and all. But what was he saying? He was praying to God. God, about the people who were responsible for his crucifixion, he was saying to God, God, please forgive them, but they do not know what they are doing. They are like a bunch of children, undeveloped spiritually. That's why they have done this to me. Yes, Jesus died on the cross, that's what most Christians believe. And then he resurrected. But we have another explanation for all those things. That is, he entered into nirvikalpa samadhi. At that time the body seems to be dead, but then again the person becomes alive. That must have happened to Jesus Christ. But anyway, that's a different point. So Jesus departed from the world, so to say, looking upon his tormentors with kindness. Then we read about one Sufi saint, his name is Al-Hussein Ibn Mansur. He was there between 858 AD and 922 AD. He was very spiritual, and through spiritual practice, he experienced divinity in himself. And our scriptures of Hinduism say that divinity is Satyam Shivam Sundaram. Divinity is the absolute truth. Satyam means absolute truth. And Hussain Mansoor experienced it. Then he would tell others, I am the truth, Anal Haq. And other people around him did not like that. And eventually he was killed by others. But even then, even while he was being killed, he said, Anal Haq, I am the truth. He was not afraid. He faced death with dignity. And Sri Sarada Devi, who is also a divine incarnation, used to say, one should learn how to die. One should learn how to die. Well, I would say something funny because someone, when I was coming to this country, I stopped in Rangoon. I had to stop in Rangoon, and the one who was the chief of that Burma, state of Burma, his wife invited me for some reason. And then she said to me, she was much older than me. She said, you are going to America? Yes. Americans are fond of jokes and stories. You tell them. Anyway, so I'm talking about Sri Sarada Devi. She said, you should know how to die. Die. That means how to face with dignity. How to die. Well, I had to visit Australia. And when I was there within the first week, some born Australian, he asked me, are you here to die? That means, have you come here to die? I wondered, what is it saying? Because he was speaking in a different accent. It is the British who would send their prisoners to Australia. They were not cultured. They would not say today, they would say to die. So when I heard that, I was amazed. Have you come here to die? That person was asking me. That means, have you come here today? Yes. So, one should learn how to die, how to face death with dignity. That's what Sri Sarada Devi said. And Swami Vivekananda gave up his body in samadhi. That is when his mind was through meditation, became one with divinity. At that time he would not have any body consciousness or anything. It is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The body would be apparently dead, even pulse beats would not be there. But the person would be in union with divinity. That is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Swami Vivekananda gave up his body that way. He lay down in bed on a particular day and gave up. And even among wandering monks in India, some of them have this training. I once met a wandering monk when I was a boy, and he was sitting under a tree and surrounded by a few people who had sat around him. Then I was curious, I was a boy. And I asked him, where do you live? He said, I don't live in one place. Just 4 or 5 days I will stay here and then I will move. I said, you move around, wander around. He said, yes, I do that. Then I said, but while you are wandering, if you become ill or something, then what do you do? Then suddenly his eyes sparkled. And in Hindi, he said to me, pointing to his body, "Arey, ye to kaya dand hai? This body is a cane only. if death comes, I'll throw it away, that's all." And many years later, when I became a monk, I remembered that person, that man. Not only that wandering monk, but just about all the monks of the Ramakrishna Order faced death with dignity. There was Swami Santoshananda. He was in charge of a large educational institutions, which was a residential one. And the day he was going to die, he called another monk and said, let the boys who are in the hostel, let them eat their dinner earlier. Because he knew that he would die. So if he dies, then there will be great disturbance in serving food to them. So let them die now, let them eat now. That's what he said. He was not at all perturbed. Swami Santoshananda was his name, and he passed away that night. And there was Swami Purushatmananda. He was in charge of a center in Assam, a province of India. And he developed some cancer in his body, and at that time there was no treatment possible, so he was brought by our order to Calcutta, and he was placed in the government hospital there. At that time our order did not have that large hospital which we have now, Ramakrishna Mission Seva Pratishthan. So he was put in that hospital, and one young monk, a brahmachari we call, novitiate monk, had come with him, and he would take care of him. Then every morning that brahmachari used to go to that hospital and spend the entire day there, and at night he would come back. And he would be with Swami Purushatmananda. And one morning when he went to see him, he heard that he had died that night before. Then he asked the other patients who were in that ward, some 3 or 4 other patients were there. And they said, oh, that was very interesting. He would usually lie in bed because he was not well. And then at night he sat up and addressed all of us. He said, I should say goodbye to you all, because Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Sarada Devi, they have come to receive me. And so saying, with a smiling face, he lay down in bed and passed away. This is Purushatmananda. So this is how monks die. There was Brahmachari Gyan Maharaj. He was a disciple of Swami Vivekananda, but he never took the final vows of sannyasa. And he would address every person very respectfully. There is a word that is respectable you, apni. and he would address even a newly joined brahmachari also by using that apni. I saw him in his room. Other Swamis would respect him highly because he was highly evolved spiritually. Then a day came when it looked like he would pass away, and many monks came to see him. Then he said to them with a smile on his face, "Someone is dying and you have come to see the fun here?" That's what he said. Brahmachari Gyanavakara Maharaj. He passed away that day. Then there was a brahmachari, a novitiate monk. He was in one of our ashramas in Calcutta. That is called the Advaita Ashrama. He developed some severe pain in his stomach. It was not going. So then he was sent to the hospital, the best government hospital which was there in Calcutta. They examined his stomach and they said that his entire stomach was filled with cancer. He had no chance of living in those days. And when he was given that news, he smiled and pointing to his body, he said, "This body has to go anyway." Isn't it? So he was not upset or anything. I was there at the time at the headquarters of the Ramakrishna Order in Belur Math. That brahmachari passed away. And also I have seen other Swamis dying. And at that time, many other Swamis would go and surround that dying Swami's bed. And one of them, they were much older than me, one of them said, "We come here, you know why? Because this is the time when Sri Ramakrishna comes to receive his soul. So he will be there. We may not see him, but he will be present there. That's why we come." So much about monks. And then a devotee of this center, his name was Mr. Singh. He has lived somewhere in Canada, in British Columbia. And he had come to know about Swami Vividishanandaji's saintliness. Vividishanandaji was my predecessor here. It is he who started the Seattle Vedanta Society. And so he came and he became his disciple, Mr. Singh. And then he came here a few times, and he was highly educated and used to be a high school teacher. And he retired prematurely because he wanted to spend his time in spiritual practice. He has a very good soul, Mr. Singh. He had a good sense of humor also. It is we, the Seattle Vedanta Society, we started the interfaith movement in Washington State. At that time, we used to hold many conferences and gatherings, interfaith gatherings. So in one such gathering, which was in downtown Seattle, he was one of the speakers. And he stood up and said, "I am Mr. So-and-so Singh, but I cannot sing." Then he gave a nice talk. He was from the Sikh religion and he gave a nice talk on Sikh religion. This daughter called me and said, "My father is dying. Apparently he is in a coma or something. So, will you pray for him?" And I said, "Is he conscious?" I said, "Maybe he is, we don't know." Then I said, "Give the phone to me. I'll talk to him." Then he gave the phone. Then I said to him, "Mr. Singh, you be sure that Sri Ramakrishna will come to you. He will never abandon you." And when he heard that, those who were present there, They said that tears started flowing down from the outer corners of his eyes. And we know that when a person is aggrieved or sad, then the tears come out from the inner corners. But when tears come from the outer corners, that shows some spiritual ecstasy. And those who saw Mr. Singh, they reported that to me later on. So he faced death with dignity. Even my father, he was a very spiritual person. And he was fully prepared for death. He was generous, he helped people and all. Then he was a young man of 19 or so. Then he passed away. I was present there. And with a smile on his face, he passed away. Then I came out of that room where he died. And addressing his soul, I said, I believed in soul at the time. I said, you are not free from physical illnesses and all. So, but please don't worry about us. God will take care of us. That's what I said to him. Yes, there are many people who face death with dignity. And it is a good way of dying, isn't it? Good way of dying. All right, thank you.